Hi, everyone. My name's Sarah, and I work for the Happy Mums Foundation, which is a maternal mental health not-for-profit organisation based in Cumbria. And I said I'd just talk a little bit about my experiences feeling suicidal around having a child, and how challenging that can be and how difficult that can be to talk about. So yeah, just to tell you a bit about what happened to me. So I've had mental health problems all through my life, really, since early teenage years, and periodically that has involved feeling suicidal in some form, whether it's just not wanting to be here or more actively. But yeah, I've struggled periodically, and I struggled a lot when I was pregnant for lots of different reasons. I was physically very unwell, and that contributed. But I spent a lot of the time that I was pregnant wanting to not be alive, and it causes a lot of really, I don't know, really difficult things to talk about, but also really conflicting things to feel, because you're kind of carrying a life form, but yet you don't want to be alive. So it's a really challenging thing to feel, and yeah, and it's a hard thing to share. I'd had IVF, so the idea that I then didn't want to be alive, which would then mean my child wasn't alive, when I'd been through that process for her to be kind of brought into life, it wasn't an accident. So yeah, so it was particularly challenging for that reason. But I was very depressed when I was pregnant. Hadn't had time off work. I was working as a nurse at the time. Had time off work, and I had a relatively okay delivery, as deliveries go, and I was sort of okay for about 2 weeks. Like I was, yeah, I mean, not okay. I was sleep deprived, and I'd been depressed throughout my pregnancy, so I wasn't great. But yeah, after a couple of weeks, things really started to spiral downwards. I think the sleep deprivation really piled up, and those feelings of really just not wanting this to be happening, like such strong feelings of I want to escape this, I want to escape this world, I want to escape this situation, I can't do this anymore, there's no escape, and that feeling of being trapped really fueled that, and I began to sort of think about ending my life more kind of seriously, really. And I did share, at a certain point I did share that, and I had mental health workers all the way through my pregnancy, and I was under the I had a CPN, a community psychiatric nurse at the time, and I also was going to Happy Mums, to peer support groups, and it was really at Happy Mums that they sort of heard those things that I was saying about wanting to escape, not being there, not being able to bear it, and I couldn't look at her. I just my daughter. I just wanted to erase myself from that situation, and I actually wrote a lot at the time, and some of it, I don't know, I wanted to share a bit of it because you don't often get to go back into that mindset. So I suppose a little bit of a trauma warning is that so I'm looking through this book, which is stuff that I wrote before and after, and on pages there are just things that say make it stop, and that feeling of being trapped. There's a lot about the contrast between me feeling like darkness and darkness and sort of negativity, compared with this new life form, this baby that was sort of sparking into life and newness. So I've got a bit here, the world dark and swimming outside, synapses sparking, so this is her, dots joining each second as the embers of mine fizzle out, cold, dark, dead coal, the remnants of a life, of a mind, of all my efforts to cohere, now silent and cold, the pieces fall through the grate, into ash and dust and splinters. So I had that really strong feeling that I was just disintegrating, I was nothing, I was shadow, I was not there, and it had a real contrast to her sort of there-ness and her, the presence of a baby has such present needs because they only exist in that second, don't they? And just make it stop, make it stop, make it stop. It never stops, on and on and on. The sky never stops turning, and just no emergency stop buttons here. I just that sense of being trapped on this carousel, and I think having a new baby can be like that, because it is a kind of never-ending carousel. There's no structure, there's no kind of routine at that point. And then I love you, but I hate you. I hate what you are. I hate what you make me, what you take from me, how you need me, how I love you, what you make me be, that you make me be. And that's actually really important, because one thing that I really struggled with being a parent is that I had always, throughout my life, assumed that at some point I would end my life. And being a parent made me feel like I couldn't do that, and that sort of paradoxically, the feeling of not being able to do that made me feel much more trapped and made me feel much more suicidal. And that's one thing that I suppose I wanted to say, is that whilst suicide prevention isn't, it's such a powerful and positive tool, sometimes if people tell you that you can't, this isn't an option, for me anyway, that sort of lack of choice and lack of escape will make me feel more suicidal and make me act in a probably more rash way, if that makes any sense. And one of the things that I struggle with it is that sort of sense that I don't have control over whether I can end my life or not, and that can make me feel more suicidal at times. So that I can sort of feel the sense of my disintegration and my hatred of myself, the confusion of whether it was me or her that I hated and didn't want, just lots of different phrases. I hate how you need me, I pity you for needing me, I fear the prison that keeps me in, that your needs keep me in, I dread the next thing you need from me. I hate myself for being complicit in your creation, for making you exist in this world of darkness and pain, for giving you a mother like me. It's unforgivable what I have done to you. Would you be better without me? But how would you live knowing I'd left you? And so I just think that the reason why I wanted to share that, and I know it might be a fairly difficult thing for people to hear, is because you don't often get to hear that, what it's like in that moment where, and it can be so hard to understand why somebody who is a new parent, a new mum, or a pregnant person might want to, or might decide that that's the only course for them, because the harm that you can do to those around you is huge. But just to give you a bit of a glimpse in that sort of feeling that you feel like your existence causes more harm than you killing yourself. And so that was where I sort of, that's the trap that you end up in, and the sort of, it's a horrible kind of vicious spiral where you end up thinking that the world would be better without you, and this the little child that you have with you would also be better without you, and it would be better if they didn't get they didn't know you, in the sense that you would cause them harm at some point. When she was about 6 weeks old, I ended up being admitted to a mother and baby unit in a psychiatric hospital in the northeast, and we were admitted there, me and my little girl, for 2 months. I think what really helped me there was that people listened to how I felt, and they didn't try and minimise it. So when I said that I didn't want to be alive anymore, they listened to that. They said, okay, right. So and they accepted that, and accepted that I could feel like that, and it wasn't sort of explained away or minimised, and think of your baby, think of this, and some of those things that people can say to you that actually make you feel more and more alone and pushed more into the darkness of your own mind, because you feel so disconnected from everybody else. I was admitted there, and I did write a little bit there, and I wrote a bit afterwards. I took lots of pictures. The picture that is on the slide, that I don't know if you, hopefully you'll be able to see at some point, is I took lots of pictures of me and her as shadows. And that was really the start of the only way that I could identify myself in connection with her. I didn't want to see myself with her in a picture, really, but the idea of us as sort of shadows I could kind of start to relate to. And I wrote a bit, and I did feel better, because people listened to me and didn't kind of explain that away. I got 2 nights sleep, and that was such a powerful thing. The nursery nurses fed her through the night, and I had 2 amazingly restorative nights sleep. And there was also somebody to take away that weight of responsibility. I sort of felt contained, literally locked in at times, but the emotions that I felt were being contained, and so I was then free to be able to contain her in that sense, so contain her needs and her emotions. I wrote a little bit about some of those things. I just want to read this bit. No. Yeah, so there's a lot in it, and there was this, and I suppose the other thing that I wanted to say is that there was this old asylum next to the hospital where I was, and it was sort of boarded up and crumbling down, and I found, I don't know, it was sort of loomed over you when you went out to walk, and I took lots of pictures. It just seemed like I don't know, I suppose the fact that I felt like I was crumbling apart, I know it might sound a bit silly, but I felt like everything was falling apart, and I didn't know what I was, and I just wanted to maybe read this poem that I wrote a bit after. I wrote this afterwards, sort of looking back at it. In the shadow of the old asylum, where the cold wind blows, where red brick turns to dust and the thick bindweed grows, there you and I were taken into rooms lined with windows and locks, with the care plans and pills in their white paper pots, and the puff of the blood pressure cuffs. Those little walls, they held us and shaped us like cubes of ice, so when we were free and the sun shone free, we melted like dew at first light. To be held in those cold rooms still, with my mind crumbling free, and the meetings and plans with their points and demands and their tiny pieces of me, that lay on the ground in splinters of ice shattered to dust in the snow, and catch the wintry light so thin and so bright, and glint where the bindweed grows. One day we will lie on a soft bed of white, in rooms with no locks and no keys. The windows look clear on the blue summer air, and the dust moves in time with the breeze. I've never shared that with anyone before, but I thought it really showed how I felt like I was sort of disintegrating, and that sort of paradox of wanting to be I remember when I left the unit just feeling so I suppose, it was just so hard to readjust to that life outside the institution. You become so institutionalized, and so many of your choices are taken away that it actually, for me, it helped, because there were fewer points to think about. And when you feel like your identity has disappeared and you don't know who you are or what you are, the more of those things that other people can think about, the easier it is to focus on just getting through that day. We left the mother and baby unit, and being at Happy Mums I carried on going. It was a place where I could talk about these things. I could say how I felt, the negative things that I felt about being a mum, about I suppose, about my feelings about that whole thing, and my daughter, I suppose I still do periodically feel suicidal, and being able to talk about that really helps me deal with that and release some of that, and not feel the kind of shame that locks me in it. And to be able to, I think, being around people who acknowledge the complexity of feeling that you can have. So it's not that you either love every second of it, or you hate everything and you want to be dead all the time. There's a complexity there, and it's in that complexity that you can find a way forwards often. And I think being able to acknowledge that has really helped me. Being able to find hope for others, I think that's another really powerful thing that has helped me. I find it really hard to find hope for myself, but in trying to find it for others, it has it rubs off on you a bit, and being able to do that for other people by running our support groups and helping them that way, I can feel some of that myself, being surrounded by people who are honest about their mental health, especially around having children, and being honest around having children, never mind mental health, but how hard it can be, and how negatively you can feel about it. That gives me a real sense of not being alone, and a sense that, yeah, we can, by sharing, we can sort of support each other through really difficult times. I still have in my own head, I still have a tricky relationship with my daughter. I don't think to anyone else on the outside, to her even, I don't think she would know that. I hope she doesn't know that. But in my own head, I still really struggle with the idea of, I still don't even think of myself as a mother, or, it's sort of like it's a sort of fact, but it's not an identity that I don't think I'll ever feel comfortable with. I think I will always struggle with that, and I think I will always struggle with the permanence that it demands of me. But with a lot of help, I've been able to kind of manage those feelings, both through my work with Happy Mums, but also through psychological intervention, and that came as a direct result of being in the mother and baby unit. I've had EMDR, so eye movement desensitization, for trauma that I had as a child, and by talking about these things, it has actually helped me, and writing has helped me, and that's given me a bit of a release, a bit of a way to, I suppose, to make sense of the things that have happened to me, and me and Addie as well. So I suppose that's my message, that things can be very complicated, and it's not feeling suicidal is not necessarily something that, a moment or a period of time that suddenly you can't believe that you ever felt like that. It's an ongoing thing. It's something that I deal with all of the time, really. And it's a constant effort to find that hope. And so it's, and to not feel ashamed about that I will always have that within me. And to recognise the complexity of that, and that you can feel that. You can also love your child. You can wish that they hadn't been born and still love them. Which is a hard thing to say, but I think that you can regret things and still love what is there, and that's something that I'm I still struggle with, and I think the more that we can talk about these things, the better. Suicide is the leading direct cause of death of mums between 6 months old and 6 months after their baby's been born, and a year after their baby's been born, and part of that, I think, is still that shame and that stigma of asking for help, of admitting how bad you feel, because of that judgment. And people do judge you. People will judge you for feeling like that when you have a new child. And there's also that fear of social services and children being taken away, that really kind of drives people to not disclose these things. So I think it's really important that we can create some safe spaces where mothers, parents feel they can express the full complexity of their emotions about being a parent and about their child, without that fear of judgment. More places where we can do that. I hope that you found my story useful, and the rest of the day there's lots of information on the slides. So if you want any more information about Happy Mums, if you want to contact me, my contact details are on the end. Thank you.